What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Charlotte Hornets MyNBA series. Here we are in Season 2, and I hope you guys are all ready for the Prospect Spotlight. Every year or every season, I go and have an episode that highlights all of the projected first-round picks and maybe a few second-round pick guys, just so we can create these storylines and get these guys ready for, getting into the NBA. We can have some kind of stories behind the players. Oh, this guy was projected to go really high at one point and he fell down a couple draft slots, or he fell down and plummeted down. I just like to be able to, create those type of stories. As of right now, I haven't added anybody to the draft board. We're not in like a spot where I'm like, crazy around our draft pick, but we do have it, thankfully, so we don't have to make a trade. We have all of our picks going forward pretty much. So those should come in handy. But we do have our first round pick this year. And before we get into the, prospects, let's see what the current mocking is looking like. As of right now, there's one guy that's kind of leading the pack, and that's going to be Pat Williamson. He's a 6'10", power forward center out of St. Mary's. He looks like he's going to potentially go #1 overall, but we'll have to see. A couple of a very a foreign player heavy draft. A guy from Lithuania, a guy from Turkey, guy from Romania. Another guy from Turkey, and Omer Ezzet. Right now, we are sitting projected around the 12th pick, because if that's, where we stand. And we are projected right now to go with Matt Patrick, a small forward out of St. John's, New York. Is that going to happen? I couldn't really tell you for sure. But let's go ahead and get a look at everybody in the first round. Go ahead, sit back, relax, and get prepared for this prospect spotlight, because, man, there's a lot of talent in this draft. We say that every year. There's always a lot of talent in every year's draft. But this one, like last year, definitely has a very good player at the top. As we mentioned, though, this one does not have that unanimous guy. Last year, it was Reggie Manning, Damon Reed. A couple of those guys were pretty argued. But this year, we're not so sure. Right now, Pat Williamson by, sports... the Sporting News big board rank, he is the #1 guy. He is a 6'10" power forward out of St. Mary's, who we just talked to. He has a good mid-range jumper, good job protecting the rim, getting rebounds. Really is going to be known as a rim protecting mid-range specialist there at the power forward position, but his range varies. He's projected all the way to 8 to 3 or to 1, so he is a very wide range of getting drafted. But I think overall the idea or a general, view of the #1 guy in this draft is going to be Alen Sankovic out of Lithuania, the 19-year-old 6'8" shooting guard. Does that sound like anybody to you? Another foreign player, perhaps? I mean, come on, the similarities are fairly obvious. This guy is a floor general, a two-way, three-level threat, according to the archetypes. He is athletic, he is fast, he is a three-point shooter, and he is just a smart all-around guy who can get... not the greatest defender, but he's not bad. He's probably, I would say, an above-average defender. He's, he's above average. He's a good guy at creating those turnovers, and maybe he's not the same archetype as Luka, which is the guy I would compare him to, but he's definitely a very good player, and very, very interested to see where he falls. Another guy, though, that has a wide range, and this guy's got a really wide range, is Guy Valentine, a 6'5" point guard out of Stanford. Currently listed as a bit of a tempo-changing point guard. He's got a very athletic build. He's he's going to run your offense. Expect him to get out in the fast break to push the ball and accelerate your team. If you're looking to change your tempo of your offense, you draft this guy to be your starting point guard going forward, because he's fast, he's athletic, he can get to the basket, he can score. Can't really shoot it all that well. I mean, he's not bad. Right around, slightly below average for his position, but he can really run your offense. But the only bad thing is he's very raw outside of that, and that's why he's probably projected more in the late 18s range rather than high in the draft. But he is going 3rd or, 4th overall in a couple of picks. Now we've got a bit of a wild card here, and Will Blackwell, only one L, the 20-year-old 6'9" center out of Indiana, is a, traditional center, but he's shown a lot of finesse around the rim. He's a very refined finisher at the basket, and that's really what's carrying his game, because at 6'9", he's a great rebounder. He kind of reminds me of Charles Barkley if I had to compare him to somebody who can, be shorter at that power forward center type position, but he's going to get you boards at an impressive rate. I think he's a very, very impressive guy if you can pick him up relatively, mid-range in the draft. I don't really know if 4 is the right spot, but maybe like a 10 or a, 8 or a 9. But overall, he's a traditional center without the traditional height, which is going to be difficult for him to kind of, be that star. But he does show the mid-range shooting potential. So if he can come in, maybe, he's a really good mid-range shooter. If he can come in and extend that a little bit to the 3-ball, maybe he becomes a very good player in the NBA. And next up at number 5 projected, we've got Norm Goodrich, a shorter point guard out of Auburn. He's a 6'1" guy, very good defender. He is a lockdown floor general. Point of attack stopper is the archetype that he gets. I would compare him, if we're talking about comparisons, to a, Gary Payton type guy. Is he going to wow you on offense? Of course, Gary Payton was good on offense as well, but that's not what he was known for. He was known for his defense. There's a reason he was nicknamed the Glove, and that's what Norm Goodrich looks like he can be. He's shorter, though, so that's going to be a bit of a task that he's going to have to overcome. But I think whatever team picks him up to be that primary on-ball defender is going to be very happy, even if he's coming off the bench or if he's going to be starting for them as we get into another shorter point guard. This guy, though, kind of the opposite. We looked at Norm Goodrich. He leaves a lot to be desired on offense. He's a below average inside scorer, below average mid-range, below average 3, but he can run your offense. He can play lockdown defense. The other way around is Vladimir Olic out of Serbia. This guy is below average inside, below average mid-range scoring, but he's going to shoot it lights out from 3. He's going to run your offense. He is a bit of a wild card as well. A Serbian guy who's 22 years old. He's, played for multiple years overseas and shows a lot of promise. But if he can just refine the rest of his game around his strengths, he's going to be a very good piece for a very good NBA team. But right now, that's why his range is so wide, 16 to 6, down all the way to 3 potentially, because he's an elite shooter. He's an elite, floor general. But he doesn't really do too much extremely well outside of that, which is why he's kind of considered a bit of a 3-point playmaker type of point guard. Next up, we've got Jens Hoffman, and once again, another foreign guy, top of this draft. He's from Germany. He is 6'6", shooting guard, small forward, who is a 3-and-D archetype guy. Is this guy going to wow you as a superstar? Most likely not, but he's got really high IQ at 22 years old, so he's obviously on the older side of the draft. He's tall for a shooting guard, and he is just going to come in and really lock down. He's going to play that Danny Green role that Danny Green always played so well. And I love comparing guys to Danny Green, but I mean, you've got other shooting guard or 3-and-D type guys. For example, on our team right now, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, those type of guys who are going to be good no matter what team they play for. They're going to come in, play great defense, and shoot the ball at an extremely high rate. And if you get a guy like that older already, sure, his ceiling might not be all that high, but, his floor is already established. He is very well, natured in what he can do and what he can't do, so don't expect him to come in and try and take over as, doing a bunch of things that he's not really known for. So Jens Hoffman is going to be a very good piece to whatever team gets him. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if he's going to go much higher than 7 as those other 2 predictions go. Now we get to the number 8 projected guy in another foreign player, Arif Aikiel out of Turkey. The 19-year-old shooting guard, small forward, standing at 6'4", is a less of your traditional shooting guard, more of the Stephon Castle type of guard, who can play a little bit of defense. He can, not shoot all that well, but he's going to drive, he's going to get to the basket, and he's going to score in, athletic ways around the basket. And he's also pretty good as far as the playmaking side of things goes. That's why his archetype is considered just a pure slasher, because he shows a lot of talent doing that. But he can be seen as very, very one-dimensional. Next up, we've got Eugene Oakley, a 6'9", small forward, power forward, rocking the number 50. That's a odd number for a small forward to wear, but he's a raw prospect. He's got a wide range, though, as you can see, 15, 9, and 9 projections. But this guy is, playing for Rutgers. He's 20 years old. Not a great shooter at all. Offense really needs a lot of help. Defense needs a little bit of help, but he's a good rebounder for the small forward position. He's got an athletic build at 6'9", with a 7-foot wingspan. That's pretty doggone impressive if you ask me, for a guy that's only 6'9". So I would be happy with a guy like that. Just like Jens Hoffman has 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. Yeah, it goes up a lot, but he's not going to be a guy you want to take and expect to come in and contribute immediately. He's going to be on the lower overall spectrum side of the spectrum, and he's going to be a guy you need to build up, and you need to train, and you need to mentor with some veteran pieces to really round out his game around the rough spots, because trust me, there's a lot of rough spots there for Eugene Oakley. But the sky is the limit for this man at just 20 years old. Next up, though, we've got our first really big man in Tudor Buska, a 22-year-old 6'11" center out of Romania. Once again, kind of true to how a lot of centers are nowadays. You're either seems like you're either a unicorn who can, dribble, run the offense, and shoot threes, or you're a traditional big man, and that is what Tudor Buska is. He's going to get you rebounds. He's going to protect the rim, but really needs to refine his offensive game if he wants to have a long, very impactful career in the NBA. Next up, we've got Sean George, a 6'9" small forward, power forward out of Wisconsin, 21 years old. He's a good shooter, really known as one of the better shooters in the draft, but he's also very sneaky athletic. I could see him as a bit of a Ray Allen type of guy, because, early on, Ray Allen wasn't known as a lot of people remember him as strictly a three-point shooter, but early in his career, Ray had very good hops. He was a very athletic rim, driving to the rim. I was going to say rim protector, but I meant rim attacker. And that's what Sean George can do. He's a little bit taller than Ray, obviously, at 6'9", but he's athletic. He's going to hit threes. He's going to hit mid-range jumpers. And if this guy can, build the rest of his game, his defense is slightly below average, but still not bad. Playmaking is slightly below average, still not bad. He can improve all of those areas. I see no reason why he can't be the best player in this draft. He's very impressive so far in what I've seen from him out of Wisconsin, and I'm excited to see how he goes into the NBA. Next up, we've got another small forward. This guy's also tall as well, 6'10", 20-year-old small forward, power forward out of St. John's, the New York edition. Obviously, not a great shooter, but AC Kennedy is your inside the arc threat there at the small forward position. And I think it's a strange comparison, but he really reminds me of a Paolo Banchero type of guy, and it's weird that he's going this low with 12, 9, 5 maybe, as early as 5, I should say, because his three-point shooting isn't very good, but he's a good guy to attack the basket. He can respectively play semi-well on the perimeter, and he's a taller guy for his position, so I think he's a high upside pick. I think a lot of teams in that mid-range of the draft, late lottery, late teens, are going to be looking at him. And as the Hornets GM, not really what I'm looking for, because we've already got Stephon Castle. I don't think we really have room for another guy that can't shoot the ball, absolutely, because we've got Mark Williams, we've got Castle. We've got to surround those guys who are very good, don't get me wrong, but we've just got to surround them with guys that can shoot nonstop. So I'm pretty set as far as that goes. Next up, we've got Mac Patrick, a teammate of AC Kennedy at St. John's, 22 years old. He's played all 4 years. He's a small forward, bit of a jack of all trades. He can shoot a little bit. He can score inside a little bit. He can play a little bit of defense. He can play make a little bit. Jack of all trades, master of none is what I would say Mac Patrick is, and that's pretty much where he stands in the draft. Some places have him going 7 like NBA.com, but most places is looking at him going in the late lottery. Next up, we've got a 6'9" power forward, a lockdown defender, Ronnie Maggette out of Butler. Got a good mid-range jumper, really needs to work on that three ball to be productive, and scoring consistently inside the paint, one or the other would be really nice. But he's going to lock down the post. Despite his height, he's going to lock down the post, and he's going to get you rebounds. And despite not being the most athletically wowing guy, he does it really well. So he kind of is very similar to the Will Blackwell guy, but instead he is pretty much a full-time power forward, a small forward type of guy. So he's not really masquerading as a center, I would say, kind of like Will Blackwell is. Now halfway through the draft projected, we've got Gabe Rice, an interior threat. Not a lot of shooters in this draft if you're, recognizing that, but he's a good athletic slasher. who can also rebound pretty well at 6'9", maybe potentially play some 2-guard spots, but he really needs to work on his shooting in order to do that because it is severely lacking. And he's just a prospect. He's not a strong defender, not a strong shooter. Out of Michigan State, I think this guy has a wide range, and I think that's pretty reasonable to see him going late in the first round because of his lack of shooting, I should say. But one of the guys that really intrigues me here is Nelson Allen, who is 20 years old. He's 6'8" for a small forward position. He's, not the strongest at all these things, but he's a good inside scorer. Not a great mid-range guy, but he can stretch the floor a little bit. He's slightly below average, a B versus a B+, which is the average at the three-point line. But he's a good defender as well. And he can rebound. He's athletic. He's a good post defender. I think this guy checks all the boxes. And at 20 years old, he is a very intriguing prospect with a inside-out capability. Unfortunately, there are some projections having him go pretty high in the lottery, top 10 even. But there's also some having him go right around where we're going to be standing, probably in that, anywhere, depending on how the season goes, 12 to 19 range. So I'm intrigued by him. I'm going to keep an eye out on him and see how he scouts at the end of the season. But do not be shocked if we end up selecting him. Similar to him is Cam Wolf. I like these guys that can shoot. Now, Cam Wolf obviously would be an interesting pick because he's 23 years old. Usually much older than you'd like to go with a first-round pick, but he's experienced. And next season, at the minimum, I want to be in a spot where this team is ready to compete. I don't want to be in a spot where this team is still struggling to make the play-in tournament. I would like to make the playoffs outright. I'm fine missing, making the play-in tournament this year, worst-case scenario. But next year, I definitely would like to make the playoffs outright. And I think Cam Wolf can definitely do that for us. Does he have a high ceiling? Probably not. He's probably one of the lower guys. But he reminds me of one of those, I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head, but a veteran guy that's been in college for a long time, like a Cam Johnson. You can ask him to come right in and play well for your team. And he's a jack of all trades on offense. Really needs help on defense, but at 6'9", power forward, small forward, he's a good shooter, a good mid-range scorer, and he's pretty, versatile in that. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's got some speed on him, and we'll definitely be, scouting him and Nelson Allen a lot further, but both of them have a over 7 and 7'1" wingspan, and I really like what I've seen from them so far. Next up, we have Randolph Blair, more of your traditional power forward type of guy. I would compare him, obviously, he's kind of getting comparisons to a Draymond Green type of guy who can score closer to the basket, not really a strong shooter, but he's pretty athletic. He can score around the rim, and he's a very, very good defender, but definitely needs to work on his speed, his positioning, and needs to improve his defense or his shooting to become a consistent player. But out of Ohio State, they've been producing some okay players. I think he's going to be another good one. As we get back to the foreign players, this guy, Ferran Santiago, out of Mexico, the 6'7", 21-year-old shooting guard, played for the national team, had some success, and at just 21 years old, decided to declare. He's kind of got comparisons to Drazen Petrovic in that he is an elite shooter. This guy can shoot lights out, and he's not all that bad on defense. Probably the best shooter in the draft as of right now as far as scouting looks, with an A+3 ball. He's got an okay perimeter defense game, which is the best you can ask. A lot of these guys come out, one or the other. They can shoot, not play defense well, or they can play defense well and they can't shoot all that well. Ferran Santiago is definitely a guy I'm interested in, and with how well he can shoot it, I can kind of settle for a, potentially develop him type of defensive player. And at 6'7", he's a very tall shooting guard type of guy, who can also slide over the small forward position. Next up, we've got a very short point guard, Clayton Floyd, 6 foot, short king there, 19 years old, out of Minnesota, but he's a pretty good overall guy. Tempo pushing point guard, similar to how we saw that, where was he earlier? Guy Valentine is, but Guy Valentine obviously has a bit of a, advantage there with the height over Clayton Floyd. But he's a good playmaker. He's going to run your offense, needs to work on refining his game. And I think at just 19 years old is the main reason he's got a high projection, but he can also go as low as the 48th pick in the second round, which obviously is a very, very wide range. Next up, we've got Cecil Rhodes. I'm going to kind of fly through these last ones. Cecil Rhodes, 6'4" shooting guard out of Purdue. Lights out shooter. Doesn't do much else, but he is just kind of like your Kyle Korver type of guy. If you can develop a bit of defense with him, he's going to be pretty good. Maybe even being that Sam Hauser type of guy that come off the bench. Don't ask him to play defense. Just ask him to literally come in the game and hit a couple of threes. Next up, back to Turkey. We've got another foreign point guard, 6'5", 19-year-old Omar Izit. He's a good inside scorer. Not the greatest shooter, but he's good playmaker, and he can run your offense. Definitely more of a slasher style point guard than a spot up or shot creator point guard. Definitely has a lot of room to improve, but he's getting some high projections. 7th from 2K Big Board, but also as low as 31 from NBA.com. Damian Dean, and we kind of have a lot of point guards down here towards the bottom of the first round or early second round. Damian Dean, 6'2", 21 years old. Pretty good spot-up shooter. He's going to be a good three-point shot creator with his athleticism and his speed, and he's also going to be able to move the ball a little bit around the perimeter, but don't ask him to be your point of attack defender. Not the greatest defender out there. Definitely leaves a lot to be desired there from UMass, but at 21, he's got some room to improve. Definitely not a absolute lost cause there, and he's got a wide range as well. Kenny Long, 5'9", spot-up shooter. Can't really do too much else. He's going to struggle to get anywhere at that 5'9" height, but I'm sure some team will take a shot out on him, just considering how, he kind of compares to a guy like Isaiah Thomas. Next up, we get back to our traditional centers. Johnny Tavares, a 6'11" big man, 23 years old. He's played 4 years plus his COVID year at Kentucky. And he's a traditional big man who has developed a bit of a three-point ball. Not very high level, but slightly above average. And that's probably the best case scenario. He's going to be a guy that a competing team, I would say, will definitely be interested in. They'll bring him in and ask him to be that starting center, or maybe even a backup center, maybe even the starting center, and hope that he can come in and play well immediately. Right around him is also another 7-foot big man, Calbert Bush, out of DePaul. He is more of your traditional big man. He's a rim protector. He's going to get you blocks. He's going to get you rebounds to a degree. He definitely needs to work on his rebounding, but really it's his height that's keeping him this early on. He's got a wide range as well. Next up, we've got DJ Higgins, another one of those 3-and-D archetype guys out of Florida, just at 20 years old, a 6'4" shooting guard, point guard. Definitely think he could perform well as a point guard for whoever drafts him. He's a perimeter guy. He's going to play around the mid-range three-point area and hopefully play some good defense for you as well. Down to the final three projected in the first round, you've got Boyd Barrett, a 6'11" center power forward out of VCU. He is also kind of a traditional center type of guy, interior offensive threat. Good post-game. I would say really refined post-game as far as, you would expect from big men nowadays. So pretty intrigued by him because he has such a refined post game, but it's not really the game we like to play. So I'm not really looking at him too much. Joey Neely is a 7-foot center, 21 years old, out of Ohio State, teammate of the other guy earlier, and he's just straight up your paint protector. Kind of like Zach Edey. He doesn't do much on offense, but he's going to protect the rim, and he's going to get you rebounds as well. Big string of big man centers here late in the first round. We've got Chuck Hughes to round out the first top 30 projected. He is your rim protector type of guy as well, but he's a veteran out of Penn State. So if you're choosing between Joey Neely or Chuck Hughes, probably if you're a competing team, go with Hughes. If you're a rebuilding team, go with Neely because the upside is there with a couple of years younger. And here's a look at a few of the other guys that have high projections. You've got a two-way, 3-level shot creator, and Willis Clayton, a 5'9" point guard out of Texas. This draft is not very strong, I will say that. And I don't edit any of these drafts. I know, like, Willard Bell, crazy good three-point shooter for a center, but I didn't edit that. That was completely auto-generated. And I just found him and, really wanted to get him, and then was able to thankfully draft him in the draft. Lowell Singleton is another guy maybe to go in the first round. He's a very athletic 6'9" small forward. He's a high flyer there out of Florida at 21 years old. Clayton Blunt is another guy, 7'1", defensive anchor center. Same thing with Jonathan Ellis. Pretty intrigued by Jonathan Ellis, though, because look at this. Elite defense and pretty good shooting, and he's projected to go late in the first round at best. Potentially in the second round. This guy, 22 years old, 6'6", out of UNLV. Very intriguing prospect. And if any of these guys look interesting, y'all go ahead and drop it down in the comments down below. I'd love to see what other players you think we should potentially go after. But that is pretty much where I stand with this draft. Now, as I mentioned, as you guys saw, we added 4 guys, but that, I always edit those draft boards even more as it moves on. Here's a full look at all 3, mock drafts so far from 2K, Sporting's News, and NBA.com. And in the 2K one, they have us selecting Mac Patrick as well. A guy that I wouldn't be absolutely opposed to. In NBA.com, they have us selecting Randolph Blair. Probably not who I'm going to be going after, but definitely going to be on the lookout for a couple of those guys that I highlighted there. Let me know what prospects intrigued you, who all you think we should potentially look into outside of the guys that I added to the draft board, or which of these guys on the draft board do you think would most definitely fit the needs, like Cam Wolf. Very interesting. All of these guys are really interesting. I'm very intrigued by Jonathan Allen just because of how late he is projected to go. I think we could trade back and still have some success drafting him in this draft. But I hope you guys did enjoy this draft prospect. I like to do one of these every season at minimum, maybe a little bit of a late season one as well coming up here in a few episodes. And I'd love to hear your feedback on these draft prospects and hear which prospects intrigue you, just potential or age or whatever is the most interesting aspect to all of you guys. As always, thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your day.